I would never in a million years give up the insight that I gained into being the best me that I am.
Dr. Taylor, welcome to the FitMind podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, so I think your message is especially relevant during this current time that we're in. And I'm just wondering how you're dealing with what's happening in the world right now.
Well, I've been living on a boat, a big boat, for about 5 months a year for the last 4 years. So I tend to do quarantine really well. It hurts my heart because of what's going on in the world. But I personally, I'm managing fine.
Nice. And for those who are listening and can't see, this is a pretty cool setup you got here with this basically floating house, it looks like.
It is. It's a riverboat, and I just live in gorgeous nature.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, so I thought maybe to start, we could just kind of get into how did you get involved at first in researching the brain?
Sure. I have a brother who eventually would grow up to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he's only 18 months older than I am. So even as a child, I became very interested in how is it he and I can have the exact same experience and walk away with very different perceptions of what just happened. So I just became interested in who are we as a people? What am I as a living being? And one thing led to another, and eventually it landed a study in the neuroanatomy, the brain anatomy, at a cellular level. So I'm brain everything. I just think the brain's the most beautiful thing, and aren't we all lucky to have one? And aren't we really lucky when it works well?
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things that really resonated with your TED Talk, which has over 29 million views. So if listeners haven't seen that, I highly recommend it. It's called My Stroke of Insight. And we're not going to spend too much time on that because you've already basically shared everything I think that you wanted to share in that talk. But it's that you're bringing this scientific view of the brain, but then you've also had a chance to kind of see it from the inside out and how it works introspectively. So maybe just kind of to briefly explain to folks what that was all about with your hemorrhage and the resulting stroke and kind of what you learned from that.
Sure. Yes, I was teaching and performing research at Harvard Medical School, and my area of specialty was really about how does our brain create our perception of reality, because I wanted to understand at a cellular level what are the differences between the brain of my brother or the brain with schizophrenia or schizoaffective, panic and anxiety, OCD. What are the differences at a cellular level between those brains and normal? So I was studying and performing research in Boston. I had a great life going on. And then I woke up one day and I had a major hemorrhage in the left half of my brain. And over the course of 4 hours, I could not walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of my life. And I became an infant in a woman's body. And, the irony that I was the girl who had this experience based on that education and that personal experience growing up. And it was kind of like the universe saying, okay, little girl, you want to know how the brain creates its perception of reality? We're going to take it away from you and let you rebuild it. So it took 8 years for me to completely recover all function of my left hemisphere. And it's just been an incredible lesson on we have so much more power over what's going on inside of our brain than we've ever been taught. And it's really beautiful.
Yeah. So what do you mean by that? So how do we have more power than what we're taught?
Well, I look at the brain as though it's a group of cells, and every ability we have because we have brain cells that perform that function. So I have the ability to wiggle my finger because I have motor neurons right here that perform that function. I can speak language, and you can understand the language that I create because you have brain cells that decipher that information. So every ability we have because we have cells that are performing that function, which means if we're experiencing, so at any moment in time, there's only three things going on inside of your brain. We think thoughts, we feel emotions, and we run a physiological response to what we're thinking and what we're feeling. And from the beginning of the moment that we think a thought, it stimulates an emotional circuit. It results in a physiological response, and it floods through you, flushes out of you, takes less than 90 seconds. So I call it the 90-second rule. And you can watch yourself. You can watch yourself. You can feel yourself get angry. You think a thought, you become angry, you start feeling anger, look at your watch, and within 90 seconds, that anger has dissipated from your body and your brain unless you rethink the thought that re-stimulates that loop. So whether you're feeling anxiety or you're feeling fear or anger or joy or love or hate, whatever it is you're experiencing, it's cells that are performing that function. And then we do have some say by paying attention to what's actually going on in my brain. What circuitry am I running? How often am I running that circuitry? Because the more I run that circuitry, the more it begins to run on automatic. Is that who I want to be? And so a lot of us are just existing in life as extremely unconscious human beings in response to what we are running inside of our brain, instead of saying, no, I don't want to feel anger right now. No, I don't want to feel fear right now. You're not that scary. Because as soon as I allow you to dictate to me what my emotional well-being is or is not, I have given up my power. So we have the ability to observe and choose to engage in how we want to be in the world, just like a sport. If you're going to learn a sport, you're going to go and you're going to practice it and practice it. You're going to become more automatic. You're going to become better at it. Same thing exactly of what's going on with the neurons inside your brain.
Yeah, it seems like what you're talking about is what some psychologists would refer to as metacognitive introspective awareness, the ability for the mind to kind of observe itself in a sense. And Rick Hansen and others have called this self-directed neuroplasticity, where you can, without getting into a debate on free will, some conscious part of yourself can become.
Let's go there.
Okay, sure. We can, maybe we'll go there next. But like some conscious part of yourself is then able to witness the inner workings of the mind, and therefore start to have some control over what's going on in there and how it relates to it.
Of course. Well, and when I had the hemorrhage and it wiped out my left hemisphere, that's all I became. I became an awareness. I became a living being, but I didn't have any detail or any ability to focus that voice in my left brain where language is. And there's a little voice that's about the size of a peanut, group of cells, that identifies me as Jill Bolte Taylor. And with Jill Bolte Taylor comes a big file that my brain has on where do I live, what's my phone number, what are my colors that I like, how do I dress, who, blah, 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 that details. And in the absence of that, though, I still existed as a whole, collective whole, an energy being related to the energy around me, because also the cells in my left parietal region went offline that defined the boundaries of where I began and where I ended. So that awareness, that to the ability to observe, is still a consciousness of the right hemisphere. It's still watching. And to me, the most important relationship we have as human beings is the relationship between those two hemispheres, because they both have very specific skill sets. They have very specific ways of processing information. They value different things. They care about different things. And ultimately, one has language and the other does not have language. So, but yet it still communicates with us. So yes, it's, to me, that awareness is that right hemisphere. And then the right hemisphere, which is what I still had, I was completely conscious. I just didn't have any skills of the left hemisphere, used myself and my focus in order to rebuild the neurocircuitry of that left brain. And that's absolutely just the neuroplasticity and the reconnection of neuronal circuitry. It was beautiful. I would not be here talking to you if neuroplasticity were not real.
Yeah, well, I think it's such an empowering concept too, because it basically tells us we can train our mind like muscles. And so I wanted to unpack the left-right hemisphere thing a little, maybe more for those who aren't familiar. And I myself am a little confused on this because I've heard some conflicting things about to what extent this is an oversimplification. So I was wondering if you could dive into a little more about that.
So, so when you look at your brain's just made up of cells, and cells specialize in certain function, and they actually have a shape that is unique to performing that function, which means that a neuron in your visual cortex, which is going to be processing vision, is going to look different than the neurons that are in your motor system so that you can do motor movement. So we know that for many things, these cells are very specialized in what they perform. What information are they bringing in, and how do they organize that information in order to perform something? So the right side of the body, the movement, is a motor cortex group of cells in the left hemisphere, and vice versa. Language, the ability to create sound, is located in the left hemisphere. The ability to understand language is a group of cells in the left hemisphere. You have comparable groups of cells in the opposite hemisphere, in the right hemisphere, but they're looking at that language creation and understanding differently. Your ability to read the emotional content of a voice is a group of cells in the language centers in your right brain. Your ability to understand and perceive facial language and body language is going to be cells in the right hemisphere. So they both do language, they just do different parts of it, and they're doing it all at the same time. So kind of the difference between what we thought before was that this would happen and that would happen and this would happen, and it was very linear, but now we know that that's not true. It's all happening. However, you have some 300 million axonal fibers between the two hemispheres, and one group of neurons can reach across to the comparable cells in the opposite hemisphere and inhibit those, so that some group of cells is going to dominate. So when you have a stroke or you have some kind of a brain trauma, if a group of cells goes offline, not only are those cells not going to be performing their function because now they're either dead or they're traumatized, but they may have released their inhibition in the opposite hemisphere so that those cells now, which are generally not dominant, can become dominant. So we have all these beautiful cells. So just to simplify, the right hemisphere tends to be right here, right now, in the present moment. When I wiped out my left hemisphere, I had no perception of the past. I had no perception of the future. I lost the boundaries of where I began and ended because it makes me a confined entity. And I lost language so that I didn't know what Jill Bolte Taylor was or any data about her. She didn't exist anymore. So the details of life are in relationship to the external world were in my left hemisphere. And in the absence of that, I had no boundaries of where I began and where I ended. I am an amazing life force power. I am an energy ball all wrapped around the cellular form, and just the concept of a cell is like the total miracle of life, where a semi-permeable membrane separates things that are inside from things that are outside, and can gain a consciousness when it multiplies itself. I mean, first of all, it's the willingness to look at yourself as a big wow, and it's open and expansive and it's responsive in the present moment. So we have these two very different ways of being in the world. One where we are as big as the universe. We are a collective in a flow. We are this big energy ball in relationship to one another. And then the left hemisphere comes in and says, okay, well, that's a non-functional human being. We need to get some details going on so that we have an identity, we have an ID, we have an ego, we have physical boundaries of where we begin and where we end. We can communicate with language. We can become punctual because there's a clock that sits and ticks in the back of that left hemisphere. And we can take this mass, amorphic mass of the big amoeba that you are, and move you into a world as a human being with an identity. So and it takes both. It really takes both in order to be a whole human being. We have two hemispheres. We're not designed to be just one or just the other. We are designed to be whole brain and to exist in the world using both of our hemispheres.
Right, right. Well, that's a beautiful summary. And I think, I mean, I would definitely consider myself more of a left brain person, at least historically. I'm wondering if maybe the education system reinforces that, you know, just the way that we're training ourselves growing up. But, you know, I've gotten really into meditation, and that seems to be training the right hemisphere and being mode versus doing mode, and kind of training the mind to enjoy the present more and more. And I'm wondering your take on just kind of ways that we can live more from that being mode.
Well, I think you're exactly right. First of all, we exist in a left brain skewed society. And each of the two hemispheres, what do they value? The right hemisphere cares about right here, right now. It's going to care about, if I'm like a neuron and you're like a neuron, I care about stimulating you and being stimulated by you. I care about people. I care about my relationships. I care about nature. I care about being present. I care about listening to that silent knowingness inside of myself. Very right here, right now, expansive and open, and how that feels in my body. The left hemisphere says, how do I take what I am and think linearly so that A plus B equals C? And if I can take A and make it B and make it C, then there's a hierarchy. And I want to climb that ladder of that hierarchy. And that puts me in competition with others who are also climbing that ladder. And so there's right and wrong and good and bad and judgment. And this is how not just our educational system, but our entire societal norm. We have a president at the top, and then we have the people at the bottom. In our school system, we have the principal at the top, and we have the students at the bottom, and all these different age groups. Our society, we have to have a structure as our societal norm. But the first classes in our educational system that go on the butching block are going to be what? It's going to be PE, it's going to be music, it's going to be, what else is it going to be? Arts. So all those things that would naturally expand us beyond the detail, which our school system is now teaching us to the test, that's all left brain. And what do we have? We got a bunch of details. Well, I can get on the internet and find you any detail I want to find, but I can't get on the internet and figure out, how do I be my best self? How do I listen to who I am? How do I figure out how to find meaning or purpose in my life? How to become the best part of who I am and bring the best part of who I am and the true gift of what I am into the world, as opposed to just all those details.
Yeah, so I'm curious how your experience with the stroke of insight, I didn't realize that you at that point stopped formally researching in the lab, but how did it like change I mean, obviously you're recovering from a stroke for 8 years, but how did it actually change your day-to-day perception of reality? Was it kind of a lasting altered trait, or was it more of just this temporary altered state that gave you a taste of something?
Honey, I would never go back to the way I was before. Never in a million years. I would never in a million years give up the insight that I gained into being the best me that I am. And I truly believe that it is our number one job to love one another. Our number one job is to love one another. And if that is my frame of mind, that's very different than looking at people and say, are you worthy of my love? and then I give you a judgment, and I give you this criteria, and then I can conditionally love you if you look right, if you speak the right language, if you eat the right foods, if you dance so that I'm not embarrassed, all these criteria and judgment of my left brain. And it's looking for differences instead of similarities. And so the left brain is constantly in search of, how do I isolate myself away from? How do I separate myself? Because the left brain is separate from the whole. And I'll take the whole over the separate any moment. But the ultimate goal is to be both. And so when my left hemisphere started coming back online, there was a personality in there that was pretty judgmental and pretty strict and pretty rigid and pretty right, wrong, and good and bad, and really good at saying, no, that doesn't look familiar. That doesn't feel safe to me. I'm going to push away from that. Where my right brain comes in and says, that looks different from me. I'm curious. What can I learn from that? What can I learn from that person with skin that's a different color? What can I learn from that person who wears clothing in colors I've never seen? What can I learn from that person? How do I live life with curiosity instead of judgment? I'll take curiosity any day of the week.
Wonderful. So it sounds like, I mean, obviously you're no longer in la la land, but that experience changed your whole perspective on life is what I'm hearing.
Well, it gave me the opportunity to choose what are my priorities and who and how do I want to be in the world. And I believe that we have all the power in the world to choose, pick and choose moment by moment, who and how we want to be in the world. So who do I want to be and how do I want to be? And I'm clear on who and how I want to be. I don't want to be hateful. It hurts inside to be hateful. We're all wired for all of it. We all have the capacity to hate. We all have the capacity to rage. We all have the capacity to lie. We all have the capacity to do all these things that we would look at and say, those are terrible things. And we all have the capacity, well, as we look at some people in the world, maybe we don't all have the capacity to be compassionate or to be empathic, but we can learn. And we know that because we're actually training MDs, physicians, in their 4 years of medical school or in their years after that, in how to become more compassionate. So it's circuitry inside of the brain. And I think you get to ask the question, who do I want to be? How do I want to be? And if I want to be likable, then hang out with people who are likable. If I want to be hateful, hang out with people who are hateful. If I want to be whatever I want to be, pay attention. One of the beautiful things is we're not plants that are planted in the ground. Our roots are there. We're here, and the only stimulation we're going to get is what blows in the wind to us. We have legs and feet that can take us. We have a cognitive mind that says, yes, I want more of that. I'm going to go toward it. Or I want less of that. I'm going to walk away from that. And we have this incredible rational cognitive mind that is actually beyond. We are feeling creatures who think. We are feeling creatures. So we have the capacity to feel all of those emotions and then go into our rational mind and say, okay, who and how do I want to be? What do I want to fuel more energy into in order to make that circuit stronger so that that begins to run more on automatic, so that that's more of what I become in my unconscious or subconscious way of being. So I think we are this phenomenally amazing ball of energy, this amazing collection of cells with these amazing emotional systems and these two cognitive minds, and creating a relationship, a healthy relationship between those parts of how we think. I believe that's our number one most important relationship.
Yeah, one thing you said there that I think is such a good point, and I just want to emphasize it, was the fact that it actually feels good to have to generate positive emotions like love and empathy. I mean, like, what more of a reason do you need to be that type, to choose to be that type of person, than the fact that it's not only making others feel better, but it's those positive qualities and mental states feel good for yourself. It's
Exactly.
really a win-win.
I live in nature because I love who I am in nature. You put me in a cement city and I'm not so happy. I'm on overstimulation. It's too loud. The smells are too pungent for me. There's too much movement. There's too many people. I just don't thrive there. So if I'm not happy there, why wouldn't I take myself and go find another environment where I can actually be the part of me that I want to be? Take some responsibility for the energy that I am and that I bring into the world.
Yeah, yeah. I guess going off of that, how else have you changed your lifestyle, or what else do you think about just when you're being intentional about how you're living and who you want to be?
Well, I live my whole life intentionally. I'm really clear that that's who and how I want to be. And probably the biggest gift that I was given with the stroke was that when I cut off that left hemisphere that made all that judgment, I became really clear on who am I and what is my stuff, and who are you and what is your stuff. And it is not my job to live inside of your judgment. It is not my job to do that. It is my job to look at myself and say, I am this life force power of 50 trillion beautiful molecular geniuses. That's what I am. And that's how I want to live my life. And so I will attract projects, and I will attract things and ideas and people and a world around me, as opposed to my left brain that wants to go and make it happen. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. What are my goals? My goal is to use me in the best way that I can be used. And I have certain projects that I can do. But what I really learned after I gave that TED Talk that you mentioned, it was the first TED Talk that ever went viral. And what I learned and that was like a tsunami of energy, because it was like, bam, it went out into the world and it exploded. And then my whole world changed in 3 months. It was really an amazing ride. But what I learned was that everybody's got ideas, and everybody wants you to bring your energy to their ideas. And I'm not on the planet for that unless it resonates with what I truly believe I'm on the planet for. And if I'm on the planet to bring my best self forward, and you have a project that I can work with you on that allows me to do that, then that's a win-win for both of us. But if it's just you've got an idea and I want to come and do that because you're like the coolest dude around, and it's going to feed my ego, and I might make some money because more people will know me, and I'll gain all those things that left hemisphere is going to give me, that's not motivating for me personally. But if you're left hemisphere dominant, you'll do all those things for those reasons, and you'll get more money and you'll get more fame, but you won't get more meaning. And I would rather live a life that allows me to pause and look at, what am I doing? How am I serving humanity? How am I using the time that I have as a human being so that I can live a joyful and meaningful life, and let that be enough?
You know, your experience and the way you're talking about it and how it's given you such a sense of purpose reminds me of a book I read called Varieties of the Religious Experience by William James, one of the leading psychologists, or basically the father of American psychology. And I'm wondering, like, have you related your experience to other folks who, it seems like cross-culturally and across different time periods, people have had a very similar experience to what you had. I doubt very much that many of them knew how the brain worked from a scientific standpoint at the time, which makes your case very unique. But it sounds like the way that they describe it, and also the way that the meaning that they came back with and the message that they came back with, was very similar, and also potentially is the same thing that's being pointed to by many different religious and meditative traditions across time. So I'm wondering if you've kind of delved into that at all, and what your thoughts are on how you relate your experience in a broader context.
So I think that absolutely 100%. And when you think about human over time, The reason why certain voices have been heard during certain experiences is because they're real and we're programmed and wired. I won't say we're programmed, but we're wired to have that ability. So if you take it even to Jung's, the Jungian 4 archetypes, I mean, these are 4 majorly different kinds of characters. And I believe we have 2 emotional brains, one in the present and one in the past and future. And we have 2 cognitive brains, one in the present and one in the past and future. And they each are very different collections of skill sets, which actually manifest as the characters of each of those 4 profiles. So if you know what your profiles are, you know what your archetypes are, you know you have all of it, then I can go into the pain of my past, and I can commiserate with myself, and I can be unhappy, and I can engage in all these different kinds of emotions that is an archetype. But then I could also bring myself into the present moment, into the bigger picture, open, expansive, and have that part of myself. Or I can bring myself into the details and the organization and all of that. How do I create order in the world, character profile? Or how do I just be right here, right now? So yes, I believe we have all 4 of those. We do. We have the cellular structure. And then it's a matter of, okay, for me, I lost my left hemisphere. Well, what did that mean? That meant I lost some character. I lost certain ways of being. And when those characters wanted to come back online and take over my brain, it was like, you're lovely. I'm really glad I have you because you help me be a functional human being, but you are not going to take over my brain. You're not going to be my primary. And so that was a conscious decision that I made in that recovery, was that I'm going to stay open and expansive and in the present. And I am going to have a healthy relationship with that left hemisphere. And I'm going to use those skill sets because I need to be able to have language again. I need to have the boundaries of where I begin and where I end so I can be a functional human being. I need to be punctual. I need to be all these other wonderful things that hemisphere gives me, but I don't need to dominate with that character. So here you are, you're saying, okay, well, I'm a little bit more in the left brain. Well, you know what that feels like, but you also know what it feels like to stand at the top of a mountain and to observe the feeling of your chest as it opens and expands and says, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. And whatever that big universe is, I'm this tiny little speck of dust in this moment of time on this ball of dirt that is flying through space, that at any moment, just like that, it could all be gone. You know that feeling. You know what it feels like to stand on a beach and to feel the ocean breathe with you as that tide comes and goes. You know how to feel that open expansiveness of yourself. Well, that's what I got full dose of, and that's where I choose to live. And then I say, I'm taking that part of me and letting that be this big. And I'm saying, left brain, you are beautiful. Thank you for serving me. You can have Friday. The rest of the time, I'm going to live in my bliss.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So to relate this, I guess one theory of consciousness that I'm familiar with a little bit is filter, this idea that the brain is kind of a filter. And of all the vast jungle of information out there, it is very selectively choosing what enters our awareness based on what would have helped us survive and reproduce. And it seems that there's many different ways for that filter to go away, whether it's psychedelics or meditation, or I guess in your case, a stroke. So what do you think of this theory? What do you make of this theory that the brain is just filtering things, and if we can widen the filter a little bit, the world can become a little more of a magical place?
So I think that the filter is there. I think the 2 hemispheres have very different filters. The right hemisphere filters to the open expansive, and the left hemisphere filters toward the detail. Excuse me. So they weave together, but we live in a left brain dominant society. you're not going to be rewarded for being, you know, big as the universe. Actually, you probably would be, but your left hemisphere ego would have to let go of enough of you to let you really be that guy. But you know that guy inside of you. So the conversation then happens, but the left brain has language. And so the left brain says, okay, well, what am I going to do this afternoon? And your right brain says internally, I want to go play ball. And it was like, and you feel that, you know, it's because you love to play. Let's say you're going to go play basketball and you love to play basketball. And it's just like, oh, it's just like fantastic. And it's just like, yeah, I want to go play ball. I want to go play ball. And then the left brain says, okay, well, I've got A, B, and C I got to get done. And the other part of your right brain's going, come on, man. You know, give me half an hour, give me 20 minutes, just let me go shoot some hoops. You know, we'll be so much better for it if you let me go shoot some hoops, because your whole heart is yearning for it. And actually, if you allow yourself to go shoot some hoops, think of all the details that your brain works out, because it takes the stress off of that left brain. And then you come back and now you have all these answers. It's just beautiful the way that the system works. So it's not about becoming right brain. It's not about not being left brain. It's about finding this healthy balance in your life between those two hemispheres, because you're a whole human being with a whole brain.
I'm wondering if, since your TED Talk, there's anything that you've learned about the brain just in recent research or findings or whatnot that has surprised you, or anything you'd like to share, just like a recent discovery about the brain, or maybe changed your perspective about how it works?
So next April, I'll be coming out with book number 2. And it took, I always said, you know, I'll never write another book unless I really have something important to say. And in the course of the last 10 years, I've had 300,000 people at least, I stopped counting after that, ask me, how do we get from the left brain into the right brain? Well, this was tough for me, because I know how to get from the right brain to the left brain. How do I help you get from the left brain to the right brain? And so I finally have an answer to that. And I'm going to go back to the 4 archetypes. You have all 4 of those characters inside of you. And if you know that you have the power to choose moment by moment who and how you want to be in the world, then you can say to yourself, right now, I'm going to go spend whatever amount of time, because it's a big negotiation inside of this committee called your head. I'm going to go spend 20 minutes being my character in my thinking right brain. And who is that character, and what does it feel like to be that character, so I can get there like that. I can go be that part of myself. And then I can take the richness of what that is and go back to being that character 1, which is that left thinking brain. And so if you know how to get between your left thinking brain and your right thinking brain, and you know how to get into your left emotional brain and your right emotional brain, then you now have the power to pick and choose which one of those characters you want to be moment by moment. To me, that's personal freedom. I don't have to be miserable. I can choose to be miserable. I can get miserable, but I don't have to stay miserable, because I know who else I can be, and I have to want to be it, and I want to know the strengths of it, and I want to know, why am I doing it in the first place? So we have these different parts of our brains, and we've just never broken them up to really look and say, I don't have to be like that right now. I need to go be like this right now. So right now, I have to be here. I have to have clothes on with a brain logo, with my hair clean, with my glasses on, set up so that I can be punctual in order to sit here and have a conversation with you. I had to have a left brain in order to do that. I had to have a left thinking brain in order to do that. So that character, I had to give that character full power and full leniency. Come online when you need to come online, so that I can be an efficient and an effective human being. But other than that, my right brain's probably going to have the conversation. But because the left brain actually speaks language, and I have 2 brains and I'm a whole brain person, I can bounce between those characters all I want and, you know, communicate something. And you have that ability too. So when you ask me, what have I learned that is new? I have finally come up with a strategy for how other people can identify what your choices are. So you can say to me, how do I get into my right brain? Well, you don't know who your right brain is. If you don't know who your right brain is, or what he feels like, or what he likes, or how he breathes, and how he holds your body, and how he speaks, then how can I get you there? You have to know who that is.
Right.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting, and I look forward to that book coming out.
It's very
Yeah, awesome. Well, listen, I mean, your message, like I said at the beginning, I think is never more relevant with this current time that we're in, that we can all learn to start becoming more conscious and living with more intention and kind of choosing the mode that we want to operate from and who we want to become. So really appreciate. Yeah.
Thank you. And part of that's going to be observing. What are you feeling? Because right now we're being overwhelmed with anxiety. And anxiety is nothing other than a group of cells inside of your brain that says, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe. And if you look at it and you recognize it as circuitry inside of your brain, then it's an energy that is running through those cells, trying to prepare you for right here, right now. Bring your mind to the present moment. And alarm, alarm, alert, alert, I'm okay, you're okay. Breathe through it. Excuse me, and know that from the beginning to the end of that is less than 90 seconds. So you have the ability to observe yourself, what's going on inside of your brain, allow it to flow through you, and then step aside and be something else.
And sorry, what's the 90-second piece again? You mentioned that earlier.
So you have, at any moment in time, you have three things going on in your head. You think thoughts, you feel emotions, and you run physiological responses to what you're thinking and what you're feeling, all right? So I can think a thought. Let's say I'm going to think of a person who inevitably, for the last 20 years, I get angry. They're linked together. Those circuits are linked together. So I think a thought, I feel myself moving into anger, and then I have a physiological response to what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. So something gets dumped into my bloodstream, floods through me, flushes out of me. And that emotion from the moment it began till the moment it's no longer in my bloodstream is less than 90 seconds. And I call that the 90-second rule. So if you're feeling anxiety, great. Admire it, respect it. It is this magnificent, beautiful tool that you have inside of your neurocircuitry to protect you. It's a beautiful thing. And if you allow it to be something really beautiful, let it happen. Let it give you the message that it's giving you, just like pain. Pain says, hey, pain, pay attention. We got a problem. And then you pay attention, and then the pain dissipates because you gave it your attention. The same thing is true for anxiety. Pay attention, recognize it's a gift, it's beautiful, it's amazing, it's powerful, and it's going to run its cycle. Be glad it did, and then get on with your day. Bring yourself back to the present moment.
That's wonderful. Yeah, so it sounds like the half-life of any given emotion is about 90 seconds. I'd say unless you keep reinforcing that story, because I think we can think of times where we've continued to tell ourselves that story for even an hour and the emotion continues.
And then we share it with somebody else, and then it just gets bigger and it gets stronger because now it's not just mine, now it's theirs. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's a 90-second cycle. It's actually more like 86 seconds, but that doesn't sound good. So look at it for 90 seconds, and then if you rethink the thought, then you're going to run your loop again, and you can run it for decades.
Yeah, I think we've all been there. Well, listen, thanks so much, Dr. Taylor. Really appreciate your time and all your knowledge.
It's been fun. Thanks so much.